If you were a weaver before Industrial Revolution, you were probably looking at this going, I don't know what I do anymore. And It took 60 years for that to settle down to be like, oh, office work is a new thing. That didn't exist. And we maybe can't even visualize what is the knowledge worker industry like in the age of AI 10, 20, 30 years from now. Welcome to Modern Logic for Your Business, where we talk about how to put AI and technology to work in real companies. I'm Andy Ron, and with me is Dustin Brusnak. Today, Dustin and I talk about a really fascinating interview with two economists from MIT, with Jon Stewart as the host. And that naturally led into a conversation where we're trying to dig in a little bit to how do we have a conversation about AI, its pros and cons, without just ending up black and white, up and down, dogs and cats, but actually try to have a more nuanced conversation about what's good about it, what's bad, and where are we really at today and how can we affect that. But before we jump in, if you're thinking about how AI could apply to your business, we'd love to help. You can schedule a free 30-minute working session with us right now at molo.now. That's MOLO.NOW. All right, let's get to the show. Well, I wanted to talk to you about this really cool episode of The Weekly Show with Jon Stewart.
Who's Jon Stewart? No one knows who that is.
Yeah, who is that guy? So he talked to two economists, David Autor and Daron Acemoglu. Oh my God, I should practice names. I'm so sorry. David and Daron, I think I can do that. Economists from MIT. I think you saw this, you watched this video too, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting because they're not like doomsayers. They don't really have a stake in the game.
It was a pretty even-handed, yeah.
Right. Because they're trying to understand what's going on. They studied the past. They're looking at how does it apply to now? So I thought it was a really interesting conversation. We'll link to it in the show notes. If folks have time, I think it's probably worth a listen. But
I have to say, it was way more even-handed than I'm used to from a lot of the political or pundit commentary that I see around AI. Mm-hmm. It was very steady. There were positives, there were negatives. Jon is obviously an amazing interviewer. There's a reason he was so popular in his today's show. Yeah. So he did a great job, I think, of interviewing them and letting them talk. And I think that measured central approach was a breath of fresh air, because we need more of those kinds of conversations in the AI space going forward.
Yeah. One of the things I heard them talk about was comparing what's happening today to what happened in the Industrial Revolution. And a lot of times I think Industrial Revolution, that was great. We had this huge surge in productivity for the average person. You think of like the story of the Model T Ford. It's like now everyone had a car. It would have been unthinkable just even a decade or two earlier. And now that had been made available because of industrialization. But
it was like the sudden and access of consumer goods effectively for the modern average person. Right.
There's a flip side to it, which I had never really understood, which is, you can look at something like Industrial Revolution at a large scale. Like, how did it affect, say, over 100 years? How did it change society? How did it change productivity? But for the individuals, it can be a completely different story. And I think that's part of the pain that software engineers are feeling today. Other knowledge workers may start to feel or have already started to feel today. And that's because just like in Industrial Revolution, you think of the artisanal labor, people who knew how to weave, people who knew how to make barrels and shoe horses, like some of these things that were highly skilled labor but belonged to the before times and wouldn't be part of an industrialized society. Those
turned mainstream occupations into sort of like artistic niche occupations.
Yeah,
that were only done by people who were either in the art space or who had very unique.
Yeah, and basically what was a living wage as a weaver suddenly was no longer a job you could do. And it's very hard, especially for people middle-aged and older, to pivot and, okay, I'm going to reskill and do something else. And that's really interesting. It's affirming to see, oh, okay, it's like the Industrial Revolution in both the good and the challenging ways for us. And there's, I think, some lessons to be learned there, especially if we talk about government or policy around. It's really hard to stop capitalism and the force of change, but you could maybe say, knowing what's coming based on what's happened in history, we could maybe adopt policies to help people with that transition.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was one of the more interesting things they dug into, because obviously no one is saying that the Industrial Revolution shouldn't have happened this far out. They were probably people early on in the Industrial Revolution saying, why are we doing this to ourselves? But I think when you look at sort of the overall arc of human progress, one of the things they pointed out in the, I believe it was in the podcast, maybe it was something else I was reading, but I think it was this, which is on average, we are living now, even the people who are struggling in the US, at a significantly better level of lifestyle than the people who were living pre-industrial revolution. Even when you look at the people who've been left behind by globalization, or people who are poor or impoverished, by and large, on our median lifestyle has come up significantly because of things like globalization and the Industrial Revolution and some of these other major sort of improvements that have happened. But at the same time, you have this generation that gets left behind by the major revolution. And I think they properly, from my opinion, identified that that is the role of government and society to step in. And we have not always had a government that was there, that was resilient to that. And that's concerning to these two economists, because they're seeing the exact same transition at a time when government is stepping back, when there's an enormous amount of debt. So there might not even be the resources to take care of these people that might be going into the job market. And also they did a good job of sort of hand waving around the uncertainty of, we don't even know how bad it's going to be, because there's a huge difference between in a year we get AGI and in 20 years we get AGI and the tools stay where they are today, right?
Or I don't even know if AGI is the meaningful metric, to be honest. But clearly things are impacted and the shape of work is changing. And it's going to take a lot of time for human beings to figure out where do they fit in the new work. And this is just like before. If you were a weaver before Industrial Revolution, you were probably looking at this going, I don't know what I do anymore. And it took 60 years for that to settle down to be like, oh, office work is a new thing. That didn't exist. And we maybe can't even visualize what is the knowledge worker industry like in the age of AI 10, 20, 30 years from now. But presumably there is still things to do
in the office.
Yeah.
Right? Like on the far dystopian end, you could see everyone is out like a busy worker bee, and the AI operations center is sending us all like go and service.
That's actually what we want.
This ditch.
That's what we want to avoid, right? We don't want everyone to just be, the AI tells us to pick up a box and carry it 5 blocks and put it down, and that's what we do all day long. We hopefully
want to be more creative and have more autonomy than that, which isn't to say that I think we will see an expansion of the trades. They've been good jobs for a really long time. And things like plumbers and electricians and even drywall and construction over the last 10 years have really done, in most areas, done very well. And the businesses that I know that are doing that kind of work are thriving. Not to say there isn't challenges, but they're thriving because you have a whole generation that basically got told those are bad jobs, go to school. And that constrained the job market. But everyone needs houses, and everyone needs drywall, and everyone needs.
When I talk to like friends of mine who are parents about what their kids graduating from high school are doing, I feel like I'm hearing more interest in trade schools, vocational careers than I remember hearing when I was that age. Yeah, so I think that might be a transition. My generation also was the start of the one that really got burned with a ton of college debt, and are now looking back saying, I don't know if that was.
It doesn't help that colleges is like an all-time high from an expense perspective when you can go to a 2-year trade school or even an apprenticeship and get a $90,000-$100,000 a year job and have a lot of career opportunity and safety there, right? So
and you're not starting off with basically a house-sized loan payment
that takes
to
30
make.
years to pay off, right?
Yeah.
When doctors and lawyers are broke because they have something's wrong with the way the education system's funded.
Yeah.
But I think back to the AI sort of touch point, when you look at the Industrial Revolution and the drivers for that, and if you can extrapolate forward, it isn't so much about stopping the wave from changing things. It's, okay, what do we need to do and be prepared for? What do we need to be funding and investigating? So one of the things that they brought up was the idea of, what was it? It's not universal basic income, but it was some sort of credit that they had allocated.
Sure.
There's ways of funding sort of the return to work and getting people to, and there's bipartisan support for getting people to retrain and making people productive members.
This is actually why I think when we're done with this conversation, the topic we're going to follow this with is trying to find common ground to talk about these things, because we're never going to reach consensus and come up with effective policy unless we can talk about AI and its impacts and its utility with some kind of even-handedness. Yeah. And that's why I really liked this, because they were economists. They weren't Silicon Valley people who are just trying to paint everything in some sort of overly saturated hue of color, paint it all. It's like you don't get a real perspective from those folks, but nor do you maybe get a balanced perspective from jaded workers who've lost their job or something like that. Those voices are going to be really sour.
Which isn't to mean that those voices aren't valid. It's just that
no, I agree.
They aren't representative of the entire.
Yeah. I mean, so honestly, I feel some of those feelings too, because I'm seeing the shape of the work change that I do. And I feel like that's hard. I used to be really special and could do things people couldn't do. And now I see the computer can do it itself, a lot of what I used to do. And I'm like, boy. But on the other hand,
I've given up on being special. You're right. But I'm happy to employ special people. But maybe being a little less special and more is a good thing. If we can figure out how to bring more people up with us, right? And I think exactly. That should be the greater part of the conversation, is how do we bring more people along for this ride? And like when I think about my role in technology for most of my career, one of my core passions is democratizing access to these sorts of advancements so that more people have access to them, so that more startups can thrive. Rarely have I gone into, with the exception of Adobe, a big corporation, and been like, yeah, this place is amazing. I love what I'm doing here, because I think those companies, those businesses will kind of take care of themselves. But there's a real value in being the person who can speak the high level language for the people that are being left in the dust by some of these advancements that don't have the capital or whatever.
Justin, think of how many startups we have worked with where the tech expense was basically breaking their ability to succeed. They would basically spend their entire bank account just trying to get this thing built and have nothing left to market it, nothing left for customer research, nothing left to pivot with what they learned from actual customers touching it. And then it just evaporates.
I used to routinely, when I do startup advisement or when I go out and work with startups, I used to routinely tell them, okay, we are giving you a bid here to build, or you are getting this built. And it's going to take you 6 months or a year, or however long it's going to take, ideally 3 months.
But usually,
and it's going to cost you $150,000, which is all of the funding. And what are you going to do next? Because all of that is to get to the starting line of the race.
Yeah.
And then you've got to compete with the best runners in the world.
My advice is you can only spend at most half of your capital to get to that point. The other half has to go into marketing and, like I said, iteration, improvement, customer research.
Because the products don't sell themselves like they used to. Back when
you can't build it and they will come. It's not going to happen.
When we got into mobile very early in like the mid 2000s, like you could build it and people would find it discovered on the App Store, and it created this gold rush for about 2 years. And then everyone after just failed, but there still was this halo effect for about a decade where people thought we can just build it and people will show up.
It's changed so much. The other day I was on a forum that I'm a part of, and someone was like, hey, I thought I'd build an app. It's so easy now. I could make a little extra cash. So anyone have any advice for me? And I almost had written like a paragraph, and then I just was like, you know what? select all, delete. I'm way too jaded because sometimes you do
Sometimes
strike
it does
gold,
happen.
but I'm just thinking it is not a place to make money anymore. It's so
Yeah.
hard. The regulation, the app review, and just the work, like building the app is the easy part. And also the coding is almost the easy part, even before AI, but understanding the problem well enough to develop an interface that's intuitive, easy, and engaging and addictive so that you actually can make money on it. That's the hard part still. But
Part
so
of
good
the
luck to
thing
that
about
person.
AI that's exciting is, so I was talking to an old customer of ours, probably one of the oldest. He worked with us for about 8 years of our 15-year history, and we're still good friends. He's since gone on to build his own team. And he was telling me that AI has really driven down the cost of R&D for him.
Oh
And
yeah.
to your point, if we had these tools 5, 6, 10 years ago, when we were working with startups predominantly, the cost of production would have been such that they could have reserved more money
That
to be
yeah.
successful, right?
That
And
was
how
the
would
thing
that
I
have
was
changed their
that's the flip
trajectory?
side. And it also talks to this whole, is there going to be work still? There was so much that didn't happen because tech was too expensive. And as we decrease the cost of tech with the assistance of AI, the opportunities are starting to explode.
Right.
And yeah, us as a consulting agency, we're having some growing pains because now instead of one client, we have 10 or 50, and we have to keep all that work organized and make sure we don't drop any balls. So it's a process challenge. But we can actually do the tech for all that because it's that much faster. And those folks are now exploring opportunities that they wouldn't have dreamed of touching 5 years ago.
Right. So it's I think the term that I've seen for it is a jagged economy, right? And I think
Mm,
that's something we've mentioned before, which is you have these spots where things are really great, and you have these spots where things are really terrible, and they're not predictable. They're not, and it's certainly not uniform even amongst different segments like software development. You have startups that can thrive. You have startups that are getting chewed up by the platform developers. You've got startups that are getting rolled over by the big guys. You've got startups that are succeeding and selling out to the big guys. And so the reality of the economy, and I think that was one of the major takeaways that I had from this from this Jon Stewart thing, which is similar to people saying AI is normal technology, right? When that report came out on AI, the AI economy is a normal post invention economy. We've seen this before. This is not, I would say the sea change of AI is probably bigger than former sea changes. I think if you have to go back to something like the Industrial Revolution for something that's going to be as transformative, but we have seen these kinds of disruptions before, and we can predict to a
mm,
reasonable degree of certainty what some of the knock-on effects are going to be. And so, given that, if we do a good job planning and
right.
preparing, we can prevent some of the hazardous effects. And I think that was the sort of the negative side of that talk, is there was at least one of the two economists basically doesn't think that there is the political will amongst especially the people here of the US to support the people that are going to be left behind by this economy. And I can't say that I disagree with that, given just how wide the wealth disparity gap has gotten. I think there are places in Europe and places in other countries where we can look to have better models for how to absorb this kind of innovation. One other point, I had a friend, he's an expert in AI implementation of big companies for a platform called SAP, and he literally wrote books on it. He's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. And he was in Germany deploying a major AI improvement, and they had basically chosen to only deploy the AI tools to a subsection of the team because they didn't want to disrupt an otherwise great team by overperforming, because they were already making the money they needed to hit all of their targets, and they were like,
Wait,
we don't want to
so
move too
it's
fast. We want to
they
slow down so that our
understood,
culture can absorb this.
they appreciated the value of the team,
Yeah,
and
they appreciated the
that
value of the team, the
disrupting it too
culture.
rapidly could fracture the team, cause people to give up, leave in frustration, and they know that long term they need this team.
They need
And
those people.
yeah,
And the managers who run that team love the team. They like the
yeah.
people they're working with. They're proud of the people that they've brought up along with them, and they don't want to leave that all behind. And it's a
So
very different mindset than what you're trained here as a CEO, which is run over everyone, make money. I've never had that mindset, but I feel like I'm often in a room with other CEOs raising my hand and saying, hey, wait, can we just care
I feel
a
like
little
it
bit
is
about
an
the people?
executive, a difference at the executive level, because the managers that I see in tech around me, they're very sympathetic to changes and would love to safeguard their team more. And yet managers usually, at least in this country, are pretty powerless to do anything about it.
And I do think it is, and not saying as one CEO, I'm not here to defend the CEO. CEOs can take care of themselves. But I will say there is it kind of gets tired to log into some of these forums and see people who don't run companies say, oh, see, all CEOs are evil. Because I go into a lot of these groups for, in particular, mid-sized and small business CEOs. And these are people who do not want to lay off their people. We talk a lot about how we can retrain, reskill, bring our people along, grow the business. They aren't going to hire people they don't need, but they certainly don't want to go and cut their team in half. And I think that's really different. And most people aren't hearing that. That's very different than you hear if you go into, say, a market-driven Fortune 500. And I think the difference is everyone in the management chain after a certain level is beholden to the stock market, which rewards short-term gain more than anything else. And the stock market has this myopic view that whatever is good for the portfolio in the short term is going to be good for the portfolio in the long term, and it punishes long-term thinkers. Whereas most mid-size and small business owners, especially family-driven businesses, they're seeing the gains and they're planning for generations. They're often planning to hand the work over to either their employees or the next generation. And so they think very differently. They're looking to capture these efficiencies more because they're afraid that the competition is going to come in and just that the Fortune 500 is going to come in and deliver something at a tenth the cost. And now they're going to have to lay everybody off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and so I think, as much as they don't need defending, I do think just like anything, there is the middle ground to be had where we're not begging on management for doing things while simultaneously pointing at the people that are doing the Dorsey layoffs and saying, well, that's objectively short-sighted. Right. And so it gets a little, so there's a lot of nuance to this conversation. And I think that it's important to investigate the nuances. I think one of the things that I've been saying, other executives I talk to have been saying, is we need strong public-private partnership here between us and the universities, between us and the government, to help safeguard society from this really disruptive technology so that we don't have large masses of unemployed people who can't feed their families.
I think this leads really well into something we want to talk about next, which is how do we reach this kind of balanced conversation about this? But first, real quick, you, dear listener, if this conversation is sparking ideas for your own company, don't just let that sit. You can grab 30 minutes with us, and Dustin or myself will help you turn those ideas into something actionable. It's super easy. You can do that right now. Go to molo.now. That's MOLO.NOW. In your browser, schedule a 15-minute conversation with us for free, and we'll give you our thoughts and hopefully get the ball rolling for you. All right, back to the episode. So my notes, I said, is it good or evil? But I think that's a way too black and white Star Wars, the dark side, the good side.
Can we just say yes and
just say it's both? The reason I brought this topic to mind is I'm on social media, and my bizarre platform of choice is one called Mastodon, which probably no one out there you've heard of, but it's the open source, like Linux equivalent of Twitter. But instead of being
it's a niche platform for niche people.
It's only got a couple tens of millions of users on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not Blue Sky or Twitter or Facebook or whatever. It's decentralized. So it's like email meets Twitter. Anyway, a lot of the people I follow on that platform, just to my ear, are just anything about AI they hate. You can't even have a conversation with them. And there was like a news article posted about, I think it was Pizza Hut, rolled out some change to their internal system for how they deliver pizzas or queue them up, some process tool. And they were all saying, yeah, this is why AI is terrible. And I looked at the article and I couldn't find any mention of AI in it, except that the company, the consultant that built the platform, is supposedly an AI company. And so there
Yeah.
may be some large language model in it, but it was rolled out 2 years ago, so probably more of a traditional neural network if there is any AI, or it's one of those things where journalists see a what we would call an expert system, so something someone coded to make decisions and calling that AI. And I view like an expert system as something totally different than AI today.
Expert system
But
is just
yeah,
gussied up software, right?
it's just software that has a bunch of left if then statements in it.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, this software rollout apparently it was a big failure. There's a lawsuit. The largest Pizza Hut owner in New York is evidently suing the company, saying you forced me to use this, and my business went down, and it was terrible. But I don't see it as AI is terrible. It did this thing. No, it's just like that was a terrible business decision. The software that was rolled out wasn't adequately tested. Didn't understand the environment it was going into. Like one of the problems was it would allow the drivers, they were going to use Uber and these kinds of gig workers to deliver pizzas instead of having their own staff. But the software would tell them when the next pizzas were coming out of the oven. And so they were gaming the system. Like they would take the first order and then they would just wait in the store 20 minutes for the next pizza to come out and take that one too. And then they could deliver 2, 3, 4, 5 pizzas on one route. The problem was that first customer, their pizza came 35 minutes late and it was cold. But the driver didn't care. They got paid the same. And the way the tipping works, the tip happens before you do the delivery. Yeah. Also, they showed the tips before you picked up work. So then some people wouldn't get pizzas delivered at all because the tip wasn't high enough and no driver would pick it up. So it's like none of that had to do with AI. That was a long story about Pizza Hut. But
when you look at a lot of the things that people malign about AI, when you really boil it down, it's usually a problem that's either wrong with capitalism and the way we treat capitalism, or automation or industry or validation or how it was executed. It's rarely but the technology itself. And I think there are some things to talk about the technology itself, and we should get into it. But a couple other examples that I have is there was someone on Twitter who posted a real Monet painting, but said it was AI generated, and got thousands of responses. It went viral. People criticizing it, saying it lacked the Monet's skill and so on. No, it was actually Monet. It was an interesting sort of take on AI bias, right? And their bias goes both directions. People are for it, people are against it, but there's a lot of people who just absolutely hate it. And many of them, I think, haven't taken the time to truly understand it. But I think on the other side, even for the people who do understand it, it's coming from a place of, why are we doing this to ourselves? Why are we hitting ourselves?
Right. If you are the artisan in the Industrial Revolution time who's lost their job because AI can do what you used to do perfectly well, obviously you're going to hate it. It's totally wrecked your career, and you're like, why? But
and then the other example I was going to say is we've seen multiple things go viral where people have gotten up on front of a college campus, people like Eric Schmidt, and done a speech, really highly regarded technology people, and then gotten booed off the stage for talking about it. And I think there's something missed there, which is like, it's here. Like, I don't know that. I think everyone should be trying to talk to the center, because when I see someone out there saying, I'm not going to use it because it doesn't produce good results, that's just clearly untrue. I'm not going to use it because we shouldn't be doing it. We're doing it, right? There's certain types of argument where it's like, you need to figure out how you fit into this picture.
Remember when we were
that set against it is
when we were talking about naming this podcast, one of the words we threw out there was pragmatic. I guess there already was a pragmatic AI podcast. I don't even know if it's still on. So it was like, we can't call it that. But I really feel like that is core to one of our core values at the company. And it's not pragmatic to say, oh, this shouldn't exist. It's not pragmatic to say, I don't want to use it because I don't like that it's resulting in people losing jobs. If you're in a capitalist society, which we are, if you're a business owner, which we are, you have to adapt. But then to get back to the earlier we hinted at policy. How can we have an effective policy conversation unless we actually know what is going on? And another one like that I think we could talk about is the energy use. I know a lot of my friends are super concerned about how much energy AI uses, and I think it's a valid concern, but also I don't think people think about it in context. I probably should have done some research for this, but aluminum uses a lot of energy too. And do we say, I'm going to stop buying things in aluminum cans because of how much electricity? It doesn't even occur to us because we're just so used to that. Cars use a ton of energy. And
Far
yet,
more than AI will, even by
yeah, and
2030.
yet people will
Right.
drive 45 minutes each day to work and not think anything of it. So, like, in context, could we somehow have a conversation like, so yeah, it uses energy. So does most things in our society. What is a useful amount of energy that we could dedicate to this for the productivity we're getting out of it? How can we
Can
offset that
we?
energy with solar and all these other things? Are there other
Right.
places
So,
that,
like, it
it's
lacks
like,
nuance to say. It feels like when I get into these debates with people and they bring up this valid complaint, right? And I'm just going to be full. I'm pretty pro AI. I go and talk to people about AI. We use AI every day. We help people with AI. That isn't to say that I'm not pragmatic and I'm not compassionate. I don't understand that it's causing major disruption for people, but it's also like my role is to make sure that people don't get left behind. Small businesses don't get left behind
mhm,
by these revolutions. And the same side, if you're coming to me and you're saying something like AI uses a ton of energy, that's objectively not good. We can all agree. Ideally, it used zero energy and was amazing. But then if your answer is we shouldn't be doing it, I think that's where there's a disconnect because there's so many other things you can be doing to make that problem less make that less problematic. There are ways that, for instance, you could power AI. There are things that AI can help with, for instance, new advances in energy once it starts getting into the hard sciences and all sorts of things that you would be leaving behind. So you can't just say, let's not do it. I think a more meaningful, more adult conversation is how do we do this wisely and pragmatically as a
yeah,
society? And I think you can't be saying, oh, look at all the AI power use and how bad that is, and simultaneously support the extreme withdrawal of investment in clean energy that the US has done over the last few years,
hmm
canceling
yeah,
nearly completed solar projects and nearly completed wind projects. And my friends who own solar residential companies, because the credits for solar are gone, are basically their residential solar has been decimated. And I think if you're going to full throatedly say that AI bad because it uses power, you need to be saying, also, I'm getting out there and I'm voting for all these pro green initiatives, and we
hmm
need to be building nuclear power plants and we need to be investing in alternative sources of energy because
also,
we're
and
not
also
going to
I would
shut
love
off the energy needs of our society.
if energy, one way to measure energy is like carbon output because most all of our energy, except for renewables, it results from burning petroleum. We should look holistically. Like, all right, where is all the carbon energy being used? And like I said, AI's bad, but like Bitcoin is orders of magnitude worse. Automobiles in this country are orders of magnitude worse. I saw a statistic. For some reason, one of the recently trained versions of Twitter's AI model called Grok, they published how much carbon was emitted in the energy generation to do that work. And it was a significant amount. But what blew my mind is it was the equivalent to the lifetime emissions of 100 automobiles.
Yeah.
And this country buys about 15 million new cars every year. So 15 million versus 100. Is the energy concern about AI even is it even worth talking about? I'm sure it is, but where's the outrage for new cars?
And there's this idea that because it's new, it's really easy for the human mind to latch on.
Yep.
We're doing this new thing and it's costly. And we're going to ignore the bedrock of all the other horrible things we're doing. And we're going to prevent this new costly thing from happening. And it is, I think it's meaningful to have conversations like about managing the new thing's power, but you also can't, if you do that in isolation from the rest of the stack, I think you're spending a lot of time and energy on something that is maybe not the best use of that time and energy. Not to say that we shouldn't be, and this is, I think, a place where society as a whole really can fit in because one of the things that I, as a proponent of AI, would be a huge fan of is saying, let's regulate the power use of AI data centers so that by law they have to pull 80% renewable energy.
I would push back and say it is useful to have the conversation, but I think it shouldn't just be shouting into the void on social media saying, I hate everything about AI. Let's capture that energy and channel it into something useful, which is affecting policy, voting for political leaders who will appreciate that right now the AI industry is running rampant with no safeguards, and they're building at an incredibly unprecedented rate and planning to use ludicrous amounts of power, even when there's not demand for it yet. You could, almost like that story from Germany, just take a slightly more measured stance, which you could do with very simple policy changes. Just add a little tax to data center energy use to just pull that back a little bit. And then they would okay, so we're still going to get there, but at a more measured and considered rate, because I still worry that the build out might be in excess of what our actual future needs are. Like once the actual cost of doing these things comes together, and maybe it's more costly than the subsidized rate we're paying right now, then when the bubble bursts, which there will be a correction at some point, whether it's a big bubble pop or just a small one, we might be making it a bigger bubble burst than it needs to be, and that'll have economic repercussions, and we might have a short recession. Like all of this, like why do we do this to ourselves?
And I think on the other side, you have a bunch of people arguing that this is an arms race with China, and China isn't. The theory is that China isn't going to do the right thing, which is, and so they're going to somehow outpace us on AI innovation. And the reality is we're doing very well on AI innovation. So is China. A lot of
the thing about China is,
but I think the other thing is when you look at China, and that's isolation. China is the biggest investor in green energy in the world, right?
Right, and also because we artificially constrained their access to the GPUs used to do this, China has innovated some of the most energy efficient models out there. It's like, why aren't we figuring out how to do that as well? If we could do the training and the inference for 1/10 as much carbon per token, basically. Yeah, why aren't we exploring that? Again, there's no need.
Pro AI folks are basically using China as this big bad that says we can't regulate AI. Meanwhile, you look at China, they've got a fully government funded solution for delivering AI. Government is very involved in all the planning and the power and everything. And they are able to, because of that involvement, they are able to do a lot of renewable energy, a lot of nuclear power plants, a lot of things better than we are. So they're going to exceed us, and they're going to be cleaner doing it. Meanwhile, we have people here arguing we can't regulate it at all, or it's going to be, or China's going to, China can do both, so why can't we? Right.
Yeah. Another thing China did is they basically outlawed crypto. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't use compute in China to do Bitcoin anymore.
Actually, I hadn't seen that. That's amazing. Well, it depends what counts as crypto, because there are certain uses of crypto that are less obnoxious than Bitcoin.
Basically, crypto mining, which is where there were all the power from a hydroelectric plant was basically going right into a data center and being essentially wasted on crypto. That is a policy that not many other nations have had the foresight to enact, and certainly this country has not done that. How much energy we could save if we just cut down on that?
So I think there are other, when we talk about, for instance, AI's impacts on jobs, right? There's this, don't want to get the cough on the mic, but when you're talking AI influence on jobs, that's another case where you're not going to put the efficiency back in the bottle, right? Like the job market is being impacted. We're starting to see big layoffs in the tech sector. I think there will be knock-on effects all the way down to mid-size and Fortune 5,000 businesses, and then mid-sized businesses, small businesses.
Yeah.
And you have people basically saying, why are we doing this? And there's a reason we're doing this. It's because for the last 50, 80 years since the revolution where we invented management sciences and we started doing globalization, we basically rewarded people for being financially capitalism. We've created a version of capitalism that rewards people for being as financially efficient as possible, regardless of the consequences of people. The market actually loves layoffs, right?
Yeah. That anytime there's layoffs announced, the stock price immediately goes up.
People, and especially if you say AI and layoffs in the same sentence, then your
I know.
stock doubles and CEO checks out. And I think if we have those sort of perverse incentives built in, it doesn't matter that what the technology is, you are incentivizing the wrong things as a society, and so you're going to get the wrong results. And that's something that as leaders we know in business all the time, which is if you create an incentive, people will find a way to meet that incentive. And oftentimes the way they do that is not what you expected to do that. And I think so we can look at AI as a tool to accelerate a poorly incentivized economy, which is why I think more of us need to be involved advocating for, okay, how are we doing this in a way that is bringing along more people?
And I think some of that, how do we do this? Decision making can only be done at a policy level by government, either state governments or federal government.
That's or even local government. If your city is selling land to a data center, you've got a lot of leverage there.
Or or taxes is another level. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, taxes are terrible, but taxes can actually be one of the easiest mechanisms whereby you can affect capitalism to shape it and guide it in the way you want it to go. You just basically make something slightly more expensive. People are going to choose that option less often and only when they really need to choose that option. Whereas right now, especially with all the funding that goes into AI, they're actually encouraging people to use things that actually they couldn't afford otherwise. They're basically paying us to waste energy right now. And that's perverse and it doesn't make sense.
And I think the technology itself, the other piece is it has the ability to create whole new industries, whole new startups, whole new innovations, and investment on that side as well would be really great, right? There's grant money that you could put out to invest in AI-driven solutions to certain things. And you could, for instance, get grants to put AI in libraries so that more people have access to AI.
You could get grants to figure out how to get a model, take one of these existing models. All right, how do we cut the cost of inference to, say, 1/10 as much?
Right.
And save power that way? Or how do we do research, fund research on training models? So you can how do you train so many billion parameter model, but do it with less energy use? Right now, all that's happening in industry, and they're funding it themselves, and their priorities are not energy used or CO2 emissions. Their priorities are stay ahead, financial priorities of the company. And yet, with a little bit of government policy, we could guide those things more towards what's best for us as a society.
Yeah, and I think as leaders, it's an interesting space to be in because when you are competing with a market, in a market where it incentivizes people to behave poorly, there's this classic kind of tragedy of the comment situations where if you don't behave poorly, you go out of business and the next guy steps into your shoes and behaves even worse. And so in those cases, when you look at those cases, that is why we as a society have come together and created civil government and regulations, because you can't outfish the fishery, right?
What frustrates me is I feel like people have forgotten we have that power. And I just feel like a lot of people are just like, it's impossible to affect this. The best I can hope for myself and my family is to hope that I'm the top 5%, because the world is going to go to shit. And I just want to be the ones on the small scrap of land that's still livable and not be one of those, or alternatively, the remaining 95%.
And scream into the void and use my energy and all my rage and anger, which is valuable, helpful energy, but I'm going to do it in a way that's like it's attacking a technology. And a technology, it's like attacking an idea. You can't really put that back in the box. If you killed OpenAI and you killed Anthropic and if we just banned them, there would be an Anthropic 2 and
they would just go offshore, right?
Right.
And so you can't stop it. I don't know. You can't stop the signal mal, right? It's out there.
But what you can do is you can vote and you can regulate and you can vote with your dollar and you can educate yourself on what the meaningful arguments are to be made and what the non-meaningful arguments to be made. For instance, the argument that AI isn't useful. Don't be making that argument, because anyone who knows anything about AI is going to look at you and go, we're writing you off now because obviously it's useful for a bunch of stuff, right? And so you need to educate if you're going to be an anti-AI person, I think you need to educate yourself on what that means.
That I tried it and it wasn't useful that one time I tried it. it's moving so fast. I would encourage you to try again and learn about what its strengths and its weaknesses are and how you compensate for those weaknesses. Because as the domain gets more complicated, you sometimes have to work harder to get it to do the thing. And I know for a while it seems ridiculous. If it's that hard to get it to do the thing, and I already can do the thing, just let me do the
Why
thing.
don't I just do the thing?
And there's actually an argument that said sometimes you should let yourself do the thing still. But if you don't explore how AI can affect the productivity of doing those things, you'll be locked in place and will eventually get overtaken and become irrelevant.
And this is exactly the same
where you
argument
can
you have,
iterate,
right?
and now you're up leveling your skills. So instead of being that artisan who's stuck and has no future, in technology and office work today, we all can be iterating and gradually improving. We don't have to be left behind.
Yeah. And I think this is similar to when a person becomes a new manager and they come to me and they're like, why don't I just do this for my direct report? Because I could do it better, faster, more cheaply for my direct report. And then that manager never learns how to train, and that direct report never learns how to do the work as good as the manager. And so you end up with a manager that is way too busy. And there's a reason you have a management layer in a business, and that's in order to amplify your direct reports and your individual contributors.
Yeah.
And similar to AI, it's like you're making the same decision there. I'm not investing in sharpening the axe. I'm just, no matter how dull the axe is, I'm just going to keep swinging at the tree harder.
This actually reminds me so much of the conversation with someone who's looking for a promotion into a leadership or management role in engineering. Yeah. And the conversation I would have with those people is like, your responsibilities are going to change. You can't just sit at your desk and code all day. You're going to have to go to meetings and talk and plan and think big picture and delegate. That really what AI is doing is forcing everyone into that position, whether they want to or not. And earlier I caught myself saying, improve. We all have a chance to improve. And that's a little bit of a judgy thing, because you might be an excellent at what you do and say, I don't need to improve. You're asking me to learn a skill that's different than this that I don't want to. And I appreciate that. We don't all want to, but the times would be a changing, and none of us
I find
it
funny.
It's
I find it funny how much this mirrors conversations that I've had around when you take someone who's really good at something and you make them a manager of people who are really good at something. You have just changed their career, not just their career trajectory. You have taken them from something they were really good at and moved them to something they have no skills to do in a lot of the time.
I know.
And when they get upset, the answer this is something I talk about when I'm coaching all the time, which is like, now I've promoted you, and now I'm mad at you for not performing as a manager.
Yeah, there's even a joke about this, right? They've been promoted to their level of incompetence. And that's basically the jaded view of, they were really good at what they did before, and they're taking the next step in their career. And you know what? It's going to take them a while to figure that out.
By definition, all new managers are promoted to their level of incompetence because they don't
that's what it means
have
to
the
be
management skills.
You have new challenges in front of you you haven't figured out yet.
And so to touch back to AI, imagine we live in a world where all the technologists showed up one day and said, by the way, we're changing your career. You didn't ask, but thank you. You're welcome. You are now all managers. And they go, hey, we're upset. And you go, too bad. There's legitimate reasons to be upset.
Oh, yeah. It absolutely is legitimate reasons to be upset. It's just in terms of what do we do about it? We can't. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't unspill the milk, whatever the metaphor you want. This is where we're at right now.
And you can either focus your time, energy being angry at it, or you can focus your time and energy re-educating and becoming a thing. Not that isn't super, super hard, but I think the people who do the latter are going to have a better chance at being
on the
island.
Flip side of it, I originally thought we would devil's advocate each other here and work on the same side. But if you think about the other side of the coin, those people who are really excited about AI and what they can do to transform their business, that is exciting. There's a big opportunity to pick up those projects that you could never have dreamed of funding before. Now you can do that. You can have a mobile app. You can have one cross-platform from the get-go. You don't have to pick, and you can have the website too. Those technology options are all on the table now. And by thinking about that, actually is what's going to give all of us technologists who are now super, super efficient stuff to keep to do. So it's good on both sides. But at the same time, while you're excited about those things, remember to have at least sympathy, if I can't get empathy out of you, some understanding of why people might be resistant, because it's scary. It's hard. It's disruptive. Came out of left field. Some people asked for it, but a lot of people didn't ask for this, but it's here.
Yeah. And they weren't ready for it. And it's legitimate to mourn the loss of and to feel bad about the loss of your way of life that you were locked in for, especially if you're older and you've spent an entire career investing in that skill set. And I think as someone who has changed my career a few times, it's always been challenging. And to expect that everyone is going to be excited is really lacks compassion, is unrealistic. And I think the key there, and the best way we contribute as pro AI people, is one, trying to help people along, teaching, training, and two, making sure that we're all trying to use that energy, as many of us as possible, to contribute to a society that can take care of the people who are going to get left behind by this. Some people are not going to be able to re-educate because they can't, or they're too late in their career or whatever. And we need to take care of those people too.
Or I honestly just had a conversation with your brother the other day around, what does a day's work look like? And he spends a lot of time just trying to keep up to date. And yet we're a consulting agency. Like we make money by billing hour. We don't exactly bill hourly, but basically an hour an engineer works for a client is an hour we get paid. That's how the company works. So how do you balance those two things, that we need to be investing time to stay current and train, but also we need to keep profit? I'm sure that all owners of companies are thinking about this too. And the fact is, in this moment in time, you have to find room to give your staff time to learn, because they're not going to be able to adapt and do these new things without experimenting, without training. And that's just reading the news, like that's a fact of life. We need all that to try to keep up with it.
Yeah, and I think AI in particular, you can hire a company like us to come in and renovate or teach or add infrastructure. But what you can't hire us to do is transform the way you approach the work using AI. That's something that you need people who are passionate about AI inside your company, driving that cultural change forward. And so we can be a great partner for those people. But if you aren't giving people the time to be excited about it and the ability to play in that place, then you're going to be stuck in that old world, basically just getting the fringe marginal advantage instead of getting the revolutionary advantage.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's something when I talk to other owners comes up a lot.
I think we've done it again. I can't believe how the time flies. I thought that was a really interesting conversation, but we should probably wrap it up, don't you think?
Yeah, it's about time to cut it. This is even longer than our last one. I think if we had one that was shorter, I think we lose our badges. So like,
I don't know.
Yeah, they take our influencer trophies away. So
anyway, thanks for joining us. If you're exploring AI, or you have something specific that you want to solve with technology or AI, the next best step you can take is to talk to us, and we'll walk you through it. You can schedule a free 30-minute session with us right now at molo.now. That's MOLO.NOW. What about, you have a question for the show? We look at the comments every week, and we would love to address things you've asked us. Go ahead, head over to modernlogic.io/podcast. There you'll find links to all of the platforms that we distribute on, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And let us know what you think. Our show is produced and edited by Ryan Peterson, with additional contributions from Dylan Brusnak, Anna Spitz, and Beth Davis. Our AI mascot, Mlem, was created by the artist Becca Ron, recently on display at Art of World in Northeast Minneapolis. Let us know if you saw him there. Our theme music is Elastic Vibe by Ziv Moran. If you find the show useful, share it with someone who would benefit. And take a moment to rate and review. It helps more than you think. Modern Logic for your business is a production of Modern Logic.